Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Naga Manchetti and Charlie State.
Our headlines today. The worst is yet to come. A warning for people to be cautious about their Christmas plans as COVID cases hit a new record.
Think carefully before you go. What kind of an event is it? Are you likely to meet people who are vulnerable? Are you going to meet loads of people you haven't met before? And get a test.
New COVID rules for large venues come into force across England. Football fans and clubbers had to show a negative test or proof they've been fully vaccinated.
Good morning. An early breakthrough for England in the second Ashes test thanks to a brilliant catch by Joss Buttler. But since then, Australia have been digging in a bit in Adelaide.
Olivia Colman and Maggie Gyllenhaal team up for their new film. They tell Breakfast how they bonded over champagne and cheeky texts.
And whilst some of you will get sunshine today after a morning frost, for many of you it's cloudy today and it'll be cloudy through the days ahead. I'll have your full forecast here on Breakfast.
Good morning, it's Thursday, December the 16th. Our main story this morning: think carefully before going to pubs and restaurants this Christmas. Don't mix with people you don't have to. They were the messages from the Prime Minister and England's Chief Medical Officer as COVID cases soar.
Boris Johnson and Professor Chris Whitty made the warnings as the UK recorded more than 78,000 new infections yesterday, the highest figure since the start of the pandemic. Damien Grammaticus has more.
It's a programme that is ramping up, vaccination after vaccination. Here from soldiers in a cathedral, queues of people outside. Or from a GP visiting an elderly patient at home. Every booster given matters because the Omicron variant is surging.
But it will give you very good protection and boost your immunity.
Already it can be seen in the numbers. A record of a little over 78,000 cases yesterday. Deaths remain relatively low, 115 on average each day over the past week, while the booster programme reached almost 500,000 a day over the same period. England's Chief Medical Officer says choose wisely who you mix with before Christmas.
I really think people should be prioritising those things and only those things that really matter to them, because otherwise the risk of someone getting infected at something that doesn't really matter to them and then not being able to do the things that do matter to them obviously goes up. I don't think you need to be a doctor to think that. I think that's what most people are very sensibly calculating, and that seems to me a sensible approach, personally.
The government, however, is not shutting down venues. Boris Johnson saw 100 of his own MPs rebel against him this week over new measures. Bruised, he says he's not planning more.
We're not cancelling events, we're not closing hospitality, we're not cancelling people's parties or their ability to mix. What we are saying is, think carefully before you go. What kind of an event is it? Are you likely to meet people who are vulnerable? Are you going to meet loads of people you haven't met before? And get a test.
Mr Johnson believes those measures, like COVID passes for big gatherings, are enough for now. But from the top of the NHS in England, more caution.
My advice would be, if you're going to go to a stadium at the weekend, make it one where you can get your vaccine or help out to give a vaccine, rather than going to watch a match. And to that point, if you're a role model in society, please get your vaccine, because actually it's dependent on all of us to show the way right now and to make decisions that help to protect society.
The reason for the caution: no one knows yet how the surge will impact the NHS, but the worst-case scenario is of even more pressure than it saw last winter. Damien Grammaticus, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, let's speak now to our Chief Political Correspondent, Adam Fleming, who's in Westminster for us this morning. So, Adam, we know those numbers are very sobering, and there are a lot of people who have a lot of thoughts about that today. We're hearing the thoughts of the Prime Minister and, of course, Chris Whitty there, not cancelling parties, but Chris Whitty saying prioritise events. The messaging here takes a bit of thinking about, doesn't it?
Well, I think what Boris Johnson will be thinking about is balancing a few different things. The fact that the government feels something has to be done to slow the spread of Omicron, but also they don't want to shut down the economy entirely. And even the medics aren't saying don't ever go out at all. It's just prioritise when you do go out to think about your own health and the health of those around you. But Boris Johnson will also be thinking about the reaction in the Conservative Party after 100 of his own MPs voted against one of his Plan B COVID measures. So he will want to not be seen to be going too far by them, because that will cause him a political problem within the Conservative Party. So I think balancing all those three things up is why he basically at that press conference yesterday left it to Chris Whitty, the Chief Medical Officer, to deliver that message about prioritising your social contacts. Now, the effect of this, though, is you can see it with your own eyes when you walk down the street. Bars, pubs and restaurants much less busy than you'd expect at this time of year, and even less busy than they were last week. And so that is leading to calls from lots of businesses and business groups for financial support to help them get through this period, a period when actually businesses make a lot of the money that sees them through January, when it's quieter anyway. And Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, is actually on a long-planned trip to California, but that is prompting Labour to accuse him kind of being missing in action. And business groups, who are quite supportive of the Treasury normally, are saying, OK, even if you're not going to provide support, can you at least provide some justification and some reasons why there's no more support from the government?
Adam, for the moment, thank you.
Voting in the North Shropshire by-election will get underway in just under an hour. The contest was triggered by the resignation of the Conservative MP Owen Paterson over breaches of parliamentary lobbying rules.
4 children have died and 5 others have been injured after falling from a bouncy castle that was blown more than 30 feet into the air in Australia.
The accident happened at a primary school in Tasmania. Let's get more from our Australia correspondent, Shaima Khalil. Shaima, this is devastating news. What happened?
Well, this accident, which was caused by a gust of wind, happened in Hillcrest Primary School in the small port city of Devonport in the northwest of Tasmania. The school was marking the end of the year with an event, and that bouncy castle where children were playing was blown into the air. And we understand from the authorities that the children fell from a height of about 10 meters, which is more than 30 feet. We know now that 4 children are dead, 2 boys, 2 girls in 6th grade, and 5 are critically injured. We also know from the police that they were treated on site and then flown into hospital. Witnesses and the police described the scenes as chaotic and confronting and distressing. Parents rushing to the school told to come and pick up their children. Of course, many of them not knowing what happened to their own children. We heard from the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, who described this as unthinkably heartbreaking. Remember, this is the end of the year, of the school year, for schools across the country here in Australia. The school was marking this with a fun day out, and the children were celebrating the end of the school year. And now those families and the community will mourn the loss of 4 children.
Shaima, thanks very much.
A study has found that the majority of patients with long COVID have still not made a full recovery after a year. Long COVID is defined as having symptoms 5 months after infection, but new research found that more than 2/3 of patients had symptoms including fatigue, muscle pain and breathlessness after 12 months.
Migrants who cross the channel in small boats are facing very poor conditions at Home Office facilities in Dover. This according to inspectors and independent monitors.
A report by the Inspectorate of Prisons says there are significant safeguarding concerns for children and vulnerable adults, despite government assurances that conditions would improve. Our Home editor, Mark Easton, reports.
Inspectors visited the Tughaven arrival centre in Dover on a quiet day in mid-October. What they discovered has prompted a call for urgent government action. 400 people, including babies and small children, held overnight in cold tents without sleeping facilities. Some accommodated in unheated double-decker buses. Inadequate care for 2 women who said they'd been raped by smugglers, and another woman who claimed to have been sold into domestic servitude. Unaccompanied children placed with unrelated adults, prompting significant safeguarding concerns, and migrants' injuries left untreated. Inspectors were told how one 16-year-old girl, picked up after a perilous channel crossing, remained in wet clothes for 2 days with undetected fuel burns on her legs and was now likely to be scarred for life. A previous inspection in September last year also revealed poor conditions at Tughaven. At the time, the Home Office assured inspectors improvements would be made, with ministers blaming coordination problems with partner agencies. Today, the Chief Inspector of Prisons, Charlie Taylor, said this was not a sufficient explanation for why 1 year later we still found people being held for even longer in conditions that were so inadequate. Responding, the Home Office said, "We take the welfare of people in our care extremely seriously, and since these inspections we have continued to improve facilities and are opening new secure facilities." That refers to controversial plans to use part of a Ministry of Defence base at Manston in Kent as a processing site for what they call illegal migrants from next month. Ministers say it will be part of a system that is fair on those who play by the rules and firm on those who do not. Mark Easton, BBC News.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.